The American people want this government to work for people and to be of, by, and for the people, not political loyalists or unelected billionaires like Elon Musk. And so I do think that this suit probably gives folks a sigh of relief as the judge will consider the merits of the argument on Monday.
What about the 50,000 people who have already accepted this, who said, you know what, I don't want to stick around for whatever this entails, and they did take that buyout package? It's about 50,000 people, which, you know, is 2.5% of the roughly 2 million federal workers who have been offered this overall. Do we know how this pause affects them?
Well, you know, traditionally about 100,000 federal workers seek to retire every year. And so the 50,000 are likely federal workers who are already planning to leave the federal workforce. You know, the buyout itself, the so-called fork in the road, it is so unlawful. It actually is seeking to promise things that Congress has not even appropriated funds for. And so I think that we'll know more on Monday after the judge hears argument about the fate of this, what we believe is a harmful and unlawful program.
Because basically your concern is someone says yes to this and then they say, actually, we're not going to pay you through September, and there's no legal recourse for those employees.
There is such a range of concerns. I mean, it's a one-sided deal that they're seeking to have employees sign, but it's also Congress has not even appropriated funds for this so-called buyout. And so there's just a range of concerns, even for the people that would be signing this. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And of course, we believe that it's flatly unlawful, which every federal judge in this country that has had the opportunity to consider something that this administration has been doing over the past 16, 17 days. Everyone that's considered this administration's actions has found them to be unlawful, from immigration to privacy violations to a range of other things.
Yeah, and we'll see how far it goes. Skye Perryman, please keep us updated as this is making its way through the courts. We'll be sure to have you back to see what is going on with this. Thank you for that. Also joining me here, Estet Herndon, who is a national politics reporter for the New York Times, and CNN's senior legal analyst, Elie Honig. Elie, Skye made a really important point there, which I think was how judges are reacting to what Trump is doing. Yeah. Because he's essentially been in this position where this is the resistance that he's facing. It's not from Democrats. It's not from anything like that. It's from the courts, really.
Yeah. This is the only resistance that Donald Trump is facing. And thus far, he's 0 for all of these lawsuits. I mean, thus far, every judge to have considered one of these lawsuits has at least put Donald Trump's actions on hold. And if I could sort of, to digest what we just heard in that very interesting interview, the position of the workers here is essentially, yes, of course the president runs the executive branch. However, that does not mean he gets to do everything and anything he wants within the executive branch. And what we just heard Ms. Perryman say is there are limits put on that by Congress that have to ultimately prevail. Now, the counter argument there is going to be something we call the unitary executive theory, which is this old popular notion of the conservative right that says the president isn't just the head of the executive branch, he is the executive branch. Congress be darned, he can do whatever he wants. So that's the clash we're headed towards.
Which seems to be one that the White House is embracing. I mean, you see how they're responding to the judge pushing this deadline.
It's one that they've wanted, and they've wanted this for a long time. I mean, I think we should see these as an attempt for the White House to stoke a fight that has been always kind of what it's been building to. They've been mentioning unitary executive theory on the trail, things like Project 2025, Agenda 47. When conservatives put down the principles of what MAGA and Trumpism meant, part of that reshaping of the federal government was an empowering of the executive branch. They knew these fights with the judiciary were coming. They actually planned ahead to kind of test some of these legal theories because the belief is that if Congress won't be that line of resistance, they understood that the judges might be the only kind of recourse.
But is there a point to where this being played out in court helps that theory that Trump has all the executive power and can do whatever he wants when it comes to firing people?
So I think there's two issues at play here. One is he may be trying to change the law. He may be trying to get this up to the Supreme Court. Several of those justices are longtime adherents of this very broad school of executive power. Maybe he's thinking, let's take a shot. Let's try to expand this. The other thing that Estet hit on that's so crucial is the incentive structure here is unlike anything we've ever seen before. Donald Trump has basically flipped the script on all these lawsuits. He has not gone through the niceties and dotted the I's and crossed the T's and given people notice and hearing and all these things from the Administrative Procedures Act. His approach basically is heck with it. I'm going to do what I want. Yeah. And then you, individual, maybe you're lucky you have a lawyer like Skye Perryman or something, but you go hire a lawyer. You go sue me. You sit there through the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen to you on Monday. And so you're right, he doesn't care, and he doesn't care about the outcome. He has no incentive.
And they've also, coming from this at multiple angles, the overall goal of reducing the federal workforce, of reshaping the bureaucracy, or what in Trump terms would be, ridding the deep state of elected partisans, is one that they've taken from this angle. It's what Doge is doing with Elon Musk. It's what, the executive order about Schedule F and kind of the reclassifying of some of these workers as political appointees, making it easier to fire them. This has been something that the deluge, the fire hose from the executive orders. When I was looking at that list, I was thinking how repetitive many of them are. And partially, I think, and I was reading that some of that is about legal theories, being able to attack things from multiple fronts. This administration is more organized in terms of implementation, not just ideology.
And it's kind of how we saw Trump's personal legal strategy play out when he was out of office. A lot of his attorneys, not all, I should say, are working for the federal government right now, are going to be. But it's this kind of either delay, and just fight it out in the courts later, or just throw everything, file all these motions, and essentially take all of these attempts to fight this.
And let me go even farther back in Donald Trump's history. He came up as a real estate baron in this city by stiffing his contractors, right? His theory was, well, I owe this concrete supplier $100,000 for this job. How about I just pay you nothing? And then you, concrete supplier, who has less resources than me, less time than me, you go hire a lawyer, you go sue me, and you know what's going to probably happen? Probably settle for a fraction of it. So it's really that same litigation tactic brought to the White House.
But what's different is this is the federal government,
Right,
and there
exactly.
are different responsibilities in terms of the USAID numbers really struck me tonight in terms of yes, there have been all the arguments about maybe this is wasteful or why are we spending money on this as a country. But to see that there are only 290 people left of an agency that had 10,000 people in it 2 weeks ago is a drastic amount. And it makes me wonder about the assurances that we've received and that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has offered, saying we're going to keep this up. But, I mean, you've virtually eliminated every position there.
They're trying to have their cake and eat it, too. They're saying this won't be a full, whole-scale change. Essential services would continue. But those numbers kind of to betray the point. Because it will be such a drastic reduction in the folks at USAID, I think what you're saying is important, though, because there was a desire for government reform. There has been a sense government's been wasteful, change is necessary. But is that what we are seeing? I think that's going to be the big question. Is really not, I think there is a mandate for shakeup, right? And I think Donald Trump is right to kind of claim that thing. But I think there's a much bigger question of what the solutions are. And that's the part the Democrats are really engaging in right now. Yes, it's a question of resistance to Trump. But the real question is, what should foreign aid look like, right? What does an efficient bureaucracy, what does efficient government look like? And Donald Trump is offering his vision of that right now. The question is going to be the counterweight.
Yeah, and we haven't really seen an alternative being offered to USAID in this sense. As Trump's talking about taking over Gaza and what that looks like. But, Ellie, what we heard from this judge, I thought this was a notable quote from the judge who blocked the midnight deadline, saying it has become ever more apparent that to our president, the rule of law is but an impediment to his policy goals. The rule of law is, according to him, something to navigate around or simply ignore, whether that be for political or personal gain.
Okay, so first of all, that judge that we're looking at right now, he's a Reagan appointee. He's not some liberal Democratic appointee. Those are pretty strong words. And I think that judge is identifying the same thing we're talking about. And look at this USAID reduction, right? The law is pretty clear that the president cannot on his own create or completely eliminate a federal agency. Congress has to do that. And so what does he do? He says, well, I'm not going to quite eliminate it. I'm just going to cut it from 10,000 people to 290 people. That was done strategically. And I agree. I think that judge is right. This is all about getting his policy goals, maybe expanding the law, and really sort of throwing red meat to the political base. And again, what's the cost to Trump? He doesn't even have to pay for his lawyers anymore. Now he has DOJ do it for free.
The only question to me is there a public response, right? Like, we haven't really seen a kind of engaged electorate or the type of pushback we saw back in 2017. Donald Trump, I think we know what this administration's goals are, and we know that they have a kind of multi-pronged legal and political strategy to advance them. To me, the issue is, where are they going to meet that resistance? We know the courts are going to be one place, but the place that will drive the elected officials will be if there's a public reaction. And we haven't seen that to this front. And I think it's important to say, is there a story about USAID and these government agencies that people do feel like essential services are being lost?
That's such a great point, because Trump is often driven by the coverage, the perception of something. He may not realize in the moment how something goes over. I'm thinking of Helsinki when he was standing shoulder to shoulder with Putin. But it was only after the coverage later that he walked back his statement, because he's driven by the coverage of this. And so far, maybe they think, well, we've got tacit approval, essentially.
Yeah, there would have been a way to do this smartly. I mean, there is government bloat. There is government waste. I mean, take the FBI. I could point out some people who may not be super necessary to the FBI.
Can
Instead,
you
he's
explain really
yeah.
quickly why a buyout in the federal government is different than a corporate buyout? Because people might be sitting
Yeah.
at home saying, okay, well, corporations do buyouts all the time. Why are you guys freaking
Yeah,
out?
a lot of people like corporate buyouts. The difference, though, is in the federal government, Congress has to allocate money. It's not just like a water faucet you can turn on and off. And so Congress has to allocate both the amount of money and the time in which it needs to be spent or cannot be spent. And here, if this buyout plan goes through, suddenly you're going to see, what's the math? 50,000 people times 7 months of benefits. I mean, that's probably hundreds of millions of dollars. So yeah, buyouts are not inherently evil. In fact, they can be quite productive and helpful in the private sector. But here, the real question is it constitutional? And that's where I think he's going to run into problems.
Ellie Honig, Estet Herndon, that was robust. Thank you both.